The seating chart was displayed on an ornate easel near the entrance to the Riverside Country Club ballroom. I found my name quickly. Table 22, tucked behind the DJ booth where the bass would make conversation impossible and the view of the ceremony would be completely blocked by speakers and equipment. "I'm so sorry about this," my sister Lauren whispered, appearing at my elbow during cocktail hour. Her wedding dress rustled as she moved, a confection of lace and tulle that had cost more than most people's cars. The Worthingtons were very specific about the head table arrangements. "Immediate family only," they said. "I am immediate family," I pointed out. "I'm your sister." "I know, but..." She gestured helplessly. "David's family is paying for everything." His mother had very specific ideas about the optics. She said the head table needed to be symmetrical. His parents, my parents, the wedding party. Adding you would throw off the balance. Balance. That word again. As if my presence was somehow destabilizing rather than essential. "It's fine," I lied. "I'll be fine at table 22. You're always so understanding, Maya." Lauren squeezed my hand, relief evident on her face. "That's why you're my favorite sister." I was her only sister, but I didn't point that out. The Worthingtons were old money, the kind of family that had country club memberships going back 4 generations and investment portfolios that weathered every economic storm. David Worthington IV worked at his family's private equity firm, a position that had been waiting for him since birth. Lauren had met him at a charity gala 2 years ago, and they'd been inseparable ever since. I'd met David exactly 3 times before the wedding. Each time he'd looked through me rather than at me, offering polite but disinterested pleasantries before returning his attention to people who mattered. His mother, Patricia Worthington, had been even worse, assessing me with ice blue eyes that calculated my worth and found it wanting. "And what do you do, Maya?" she'd asked at the engagement party. "I work in public policy," I'd said. "Oh." Her tone suggested I'd admitted to being unemployed. "How civic-minded of you." She turned away before I could elaborate, moving on to someone more interesting. Someone whose career didn't involve working with the government, which Patricia clearly considered one step above working at the DMV. The truth was more complicated, but I'd learned years ago that explaining my job often created more problems than it solved. Senior Policy Advisor to the Governor. That was my official title. What it meant in practice was that I shaped the state's agenda on everything from healthcare to education to economic development. I wrote speeches, negotiated with legislators, managed crises, and occasionally prevented political disasters before they happened. But public policy sounded boring, unglamorous, and most importantly to people like the Worthingtons, unprofitable. So I'd stopped elaborating. The ceremony was beautiful. Lauren looked radiant as she walked down the aisle on our father's arm. David beamed at the altar. His groomsmen stood in perfectly tailored tuxedos. The bridesmaids wore matching blush pink that complemented the rose arrangements. And I sat at table 22 behind the DJ booth, watching my sister get married through a gap between speakers. The reception started with the traditional first dance, followed by parent dances. Then Patricia Worthington took the microphone for a toast. "Family," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard, "is the foundation of everything. David's father and I are thrilled to welcome Lauren into the Worthington family. She's proven herself to be exactly the kind of woman we always hoped our son would choose. Graceful, accomplished, and from good stock." Good stock. Like we were horses being evaluated for breeding. "The Worthingtons have always valued tradition," Patricia continued. "Family dinners every Sunday. Annual trips to Martha's Vineyard. Supporting the right causes and associating with the right people. Lauren understands these values. She fits seamlessly into our world." I took a long sip of champagne. At table 22 I was surrounded by David's distant cousins from California. Nice enough people who spent most of dinner discussing real estate prices in Marin County. "And now," Patricia said, "let's hear from the bride's father." Dad stood, his toast mercifully shorter and more heartfelt. He talked about Lauren's childhood, her kindness, his pride in the woman she'd become. He welcomed David to our family with genuine warmth. No one mentioned me. Not in the toasts, not in the speeches, not even in the casual family stories that peppered the evening. It was as if I'd been photoshopped out of the family narrative entirely. I was contemplating a graceful early exit when I noticed the commotion at the entrance. Security detail. 3 men in dark suits with earpieces, moving with the practiced efficiency of professional protection. They were scanning the room with the kind of alertness that came from training and experience. My heart sank. Oh, he wouldn't. We'd discussed this. But Governor James Thornton walked through the entrance like he owned it, which in a way he did. He was the governor of the entire state after all. 62 years old, silver hair perfectly styled, presence that commanded immediate attention. His detail fanned out, positioning themselves strategically around the ballroom. The DJ's music stuttered to a stop. Conversations died mid-sentence. 300 wedding guests turned to stare. Lauren had gone pale. David looked confused. Patricia Worthington's expression suggested someone had committed a massive breach of etiquette, which technically someone had. Governor Thornton's eyes swept the ballroom until they found me behind the DJ booth. His expression softened into a smile. "Hiya," he called out, his voice carrying easily across the silent room. "There you are. I've been looking for you." Every head swiveled toward table 22. The California cousins' mouths hung open. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress. "Governor Thornton. I didn't expect to see you here." I know. He navigated through the tables toward me, his security detail trailing discreetly. "You said you needed the weekend off for your sister's wedding. But then the education reform bill passed the Senate this afternoon. Unanimous vote, Maya, unanimous. And I couldn't celebrate without my senior policy advisor. The person who made it happen." He'd reached my table. Without hesitation he pulled me into a hug, professional but warm, the kind of embrace that spoke to years of working closely together. "Congratulations," he said, pulling back. 4 years of work and you got every single provision we wanted. Every single one. Do you know how rare that is?" "It was a team effort," I said quietly, aware of 300 pairs of eyes watching. "It was your effort," he corrected firmly. He turned to address the room, slipping effortlessly into his public speaking mode. "For those who don't know, Maya Chin is my senior policy advisor. She's been with my administration for 6 years. In that time she's crafted legislation that's expanded healthcare access to 200,000 residents, reformed our education system, brought 15 major employers to the state, and today she got unanimous support for the most comprehensive education reform bill in state history." Lauren was gripping David's arm. Patricia had set down her champagne glass with shaking hands. "Maya is the person I call at 3 in the morning when there's a crisis," the governor continued. "She's the person I trust to negotiate with the legislature when tensions are high. She's the person who writes the speeches that shape our state's direction. She's brilliant, tireless, and frankly, she's the reason my administration has been successful." He looked at me. "I'm also here because I wanted to personally deliver some news. Maya, the president called me this afternoon. She's nominating you for Deputy Secretary of Education. Federal level. You'll be working in Washington, shaping national policy." The room erupted in gasps. I felt lightheaded. "Sir, we haven't discussed this. We're discussing it now." His smile was genuine. "The president needs brilliant minds in her administration. People who can actually get things done. People who understand both policy and politics. She asked me for recommendations and Maya, you were the first name I gave her." My father had stood up, his face a mixture of pride and shock. Mom was crying. Lauren looked like she'd been slapped. Patricia Worthington found her voice. "Governor, I apologize for the confusion, but Maya she's in public policy? We were told she worked for the government doing administrative work." The governor's expression cooled several degrees. "Administrative work." He repeated the phrase like it tasted bad. "Mrs. Worthington, Maya runs my policy office. She supervises a team of 42 staffers. She drafts legislation, negotiates with federal agencies, manages a $12 million budget and quite literally shapes the future of this state. I'm not sure what you consider administrative work, but Maya's job is one of the most important in state government." "But she said," Patricia started. "She said she works in public policy," I interrupted quietly. "Which is true. You decided that meant I was unimportant. You never asked for details." David had turned to Lauren. "Your sister works for the governor? The actual governor?" "I didn't know," Lauren whispered. "Maya, you never said." "I tried," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion churning beneath. At your engagement party, I mentioned the healthcare expansion project. You said that was nice and changed the subject to wedding venues. At the bridal shower, I talked about the education reform bill. Patricia said government work was so bureaucratic and asked if I'd ever considered the private sector. The governor was watching this exchange with growing understanding. The seating arrangement, he said slowly, looking at table 22. You put her behind the DJ booth. We had limited space, David said weakly. The head table was immediate family only. She is immediate family. She's the bride's sister. The governor's tone had gone from warm to arctic. But you decided she wasn't important enough for the head table. Not impressive enough for the Worthington optics. Patricia's face had flushed red. We simply didn't realize. You didn't ask, the governor said bluntly. You made assumptions about Maya's career, her importance, her value. And you seated one of the most influential policy minds in the state behind audio equipment. His head of security approached. Sir, we should. Give me one more minute. He turned back to me. Maya, I know this is your sister's wedding. I know this is awkward. But I wanted you to hear the news in person, and I wanted your family to understand what they have in you. You've been too humble, too willing to let people underestimate you. But the truth is you're exceptional. The president sees it. I see it. Hell, the entire state legislature sees it, even when they're fighting against your proposals. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is the formal offer letter from the White House. Salary is $245,000 plus benefits. You'd start in 60 days, giving you time to transition your current projects. The president wants an answer by next Friday. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Thank you, sir. I'll review it carefully. I know you will. That's why you're the best at what you do. He smiled. Now I'll get out of your hair and let you enjoy your sister's wedding. Though I have to say the acoustics behind that DJ booth must be terrible. As the governor moved toward the exit, stopping to shake hands with various guests who suddenly wanted his attention, I remained standing at table 22. The California cousins were staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Lauren pushed through the crowd, David trailing behind her. Maya, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. You're nominated for Deputy Secretary of Education? Federal level. Apparently. Why didn't you tell me? I met her eyes. Lauren, I've tried to tell you about my work for 6 years. Every time I bring it up, you glaze over or change the subject. You've decided that government work is boring and unglamorous, so you stopped listening. But Deputy Secretary is just a title. The work I was doing before was just as important. But you never asked about it. I softened slightly. I know planning this wedding has consumed you. I know the Worthingtons have been demanding. But Laura, you seated me behind the DJ booth at your wedding. You excluded me from the head table because David's mother said I'd throw off the optics. You let them treat me like I was unimportant. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. I was wrong. God, Maya, I was so wrong. Can you forgive me? Eventually. Maybe. But not today. I looked at David. Your family measured my worth by your standards. Private sector success, social connections, visible wealth. You never considered that success might look different in public service. That influence might be quiet rather than flashy. That importance might not come with a country club membership. Patricia had approached, her usual composure shattered. Miss Chin, I apologize. If I'd known about your position, you would have treated me differently, I finished. Which is exactly the problem, Mrs. Worthington. My value didn't change between when you dismissed me as doing administrative work and when you learned I'm being nominated for a federal position. I was always doing important work. You just couldn't see it because it didn't fit your definition of success. My parents had reached us, both crying. Dad pulled me into a hug. We're so proud of you, Maya Bear. We should have been more supportive of your career. Should have understood better what you were accomplishing. It's okay, Dad. It's not okay. We let you sit behind the DJ booth at your sister's wedding. That's not okay. Mom was practically vibrating with emotion. Deputy Secretary of Education. My baby is going to work in the White House. Maybe, I corrected. I haven't accepted yet. It would mean moving to D.C., leaving my team here, starting over in a new environment. But you'll consider it? I looked at the envelope in my hands, at my family's shocked faces, at table 22 where I'd spent the evening being invisible. Yeah. I'll consider it. The reception continued, but the energy had fundamentally shifted. Guests who'd ignored me all evening suddenly wanted to introduce themselves. David's college friends asked about my work. Patricia's social circle made awkward attempts at conversation, clearly trying to salvage their earlier dismissiveness. The videographer found me near the cake table. "Miss Chen, we got the governor's arrival and speech on camera. Should we include it in the final wedding video?" I looked at Lauren, who was watching from across the room. This was her day. Her moment. Despite everything, I didn't want to ruin it completely. "That's up to Lauren and David," I said. "It's their wedding video." But I knew the answer. Of course they'd include it. The governor of the state, announcing a federal nomination at their wedding reception. It would be the story they told for years, though probably not the way they'd originally envisioned. At 11 o'clock I finally made my exit. Lauren caught me at the door. "Maya, please. Stay. We haven't had a chance to really talk." "There's nothing to talk about tonight, Laure. You have a wedding to finish. A husband to celebrate with. We can talk next week when emotions aren't running so high. I love you. You know that, right?" "I know. I love you too. That's why I came to your wedding even after being seated behind the DJ booth." I kissed her cheek. "Congratulations on your marriage. David seems like a good guy. I hope he makes you happy." "He does. But Maya, you're really going to consider Washington?" I thought about 6 years of being underestimated, of having my work dismissed as administrative, of being hidden away at weddings and family gatherings because I didn't fit the expected mold of success. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." In the parking lot, I found the governor's car still there, him finishing a phone call. He rolled down the window as I approached. "You're leaving early," he observed. "Seemed like a good time." I meant what I said in there. "You're the best policy mind I've ever worked with. But Maya, you let people underestimate you. You hide your accomplishments. You accept seats behind DJ booths without complaint." I didn't want to make waves. "Maybe it's time to make some waves." He handed me his card. "Call me Monday. We'll discuss the federal offer. And Maya, whatever you decide, don't let other people's inability to see your value determine your choices. You're exceptional. Start believing it." As I drove home, I thought about table 22, about the governor's surprise arrival, about the White House envelope sitting in my purse. About 6 years of quiet accomplishment that my own family had failed to notice until someone important pointed it out. The wedding video would capture everything. Patricia's dismissive toast, the governor's dramatic entrance, Lauren's shocked face when she realized her unimportant sister was being nominated for a federal position. Some people would watch that video and see a disrupted wedding. A social catastrophe. An embarrassment for the Worthington family. I would watch it and see the moment I stopped accepting other people's underestimation. The moment I realized my worth wasn't determined by where they seated me, but by the work I'd been doing all along, whether they noticed or not. And maybe, just maybe, the moment I decided that Washington, D.C. and a fresh start sounded exactly right.